Credit Regulator NCR is embarking on an awareness campaign on consumers' rights. During March, the regulator educates and informs consumers about the importance of knowing their credit status and getting a credit report. The 15th of March is celebrated as World Consumer Rights Day every year. It is a time for promoting the basic rights of all consumers and for demanding that those rights be protected. The NCR has dedicated this month as Consumer Rights Month. Advocate Kedilatile Legodi is the acting manager responsible for education and communication at NCR, and she joins us now live in studio. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much indeed. So the month of March, as I said on my introduction, is set aside usually for consumer rights awareness. How important is this month, and really what difference does it bring?
Look, I think I need to mention that it's not only the National Credit Regulator that has embarked on this drive. However, if you look at South Africa, the consumer protection landscape is made out of various consumer protection entities such as your FSCA, Financial Services Conduct Authority, as well as other regulators, where our mandate we derive from a specific legislation. So in collaboration with those entities through a forum called Consumer Protection Forum, which is a voluntary government association comprising of these consumer bodies, we are embarking on a national campaign, to raise awareness, to advocate key consumer issues and consumer fundamental consumer rights. But we are undertaking various educational campaigns, and most importantly, we want all the players in the market to comply with the consumer protection prescripts that we have. So for us, it's very important that consumers need to know, if we have in various bodies, consumers need to know, if I have this specific issue, which consumer protection body do I go to?
Because there's also the credit ombudsman, I think.
Yeah, so there's the National Credit Regulator, there's the National Consumer Commission, which deals with the specific issues that consumers need.
All right, so what do you deal with specifically as
So
NCR?
the National Credit Regulator, we regulate the credit industry. So basically what it means is that we register key players. These are your credit providers, your debt counselors, and we ensure that they comply to the prescripts of the National Credit Act. So that is our primary mandate as the National Credit Regulator. Of course, consumer protection, because consumers have rights as far as credit is related. So our mandate is to educate consumers as well on their credit-related rights.
And ensure their rights. But what are those fundamental rights that you're referring to?
So when it comes to credit, I also need to mention that with every right there is an obligation. So as a consumer, you have a right to apply for credit. But when you do so, you need to disclose everything, in good faith. You need to be upfront with all your financials. And if your credit is being declined, you have a right to know what are the reasons for your credit being declined. Of utmost importance is that a consumer has a right to disclosure. So when you apply for that credit, you have a right to be given what we call a pre-statement quotation. This is a document that spells out how much you have been borrowed, how much will be your installment, when will that installment be payable, and what is the last payment that you will make, in that agreement. So you have a right to do so. You also have a right to be given 5 days to think about it. So if your credit is being approved, you don't have to necessarily sign on the dotted line. You need to get that statement, go home, think about it and check whether this is what you need, because credit is expensive. So there's quite a number of rights. You have a right to a free credit report a year, whether you have debts or you don't. I mean, with the prevalence of fraud and identity theft, it's important for consumers to know. So they do have a right for a free credit report every year.
But what challenges or complaints do you usually come across from consumers? Because one that comes automatically to my mind, I've had a lot of people complaining about what they term balloon payments for their cars. A person will be complaining that, listen, when I took this car on credit, I was only told about the actual payment, but as I thought that I was done with the payments, and then there comes the balloon payment, which of course was never explained to me in detail.
Yeah, look, those are some of the complaints that we receive. But if we look at the contributing factors, is issues of knowledge. So when a consumer entered into that agreement, the consumer didn't understand that for me to qualify for this car, there was a balloon payment, which is a lump sum that a consumer has to pay at the end of the term of that agreement. So what we see is that consumers do lack knowledge, to inform decisions before they, they take credit up.
Yeah. But is it not the responsibility of a credit provider to make sure that I understand? Because if you were to come to me and talk about a balloon payment, it really doesn't make any sense to me. Is it not the responsibility of your credit providers to make sure that as a consumer, I do understand the terms and conditions of whatever that I'm getting on credit?
You are correct. That is a credit provider's responsibility to do so. As part of one of the rights, a consumer has a right to be given these agreements in plain and understandable language. So oftentimes you find that the documents contain jargon. So a consumer should not sign. You should make a credit provider explain to you that document before you actually sign on the dotted line. So they do have an obligation to explain these things to the consumers.
All right. So talk to us quickly about the programs that you'll be embarking on as the NCR this month, most specifically for the 15th.
Okay, for the 15th, which is World Consumer Rights Day, it will be commemorated in the Eastern Cape. I've mentioned that we're doing this in collaboration with the CPF. So all members of the CPF, we will be having a national event which will be held in Eastern Cape, but this will be held on the 13th. However, throughout the month of March, we'll be running national campaigns. As the NCR, we will be having, radio adverts, trying to educate consumers.
But why are you only doing it now during this month? Should you not be doing it 365 days throughout the year?
Oh, absolutely. As the NCR, we run these campaigns all year long. So we don't necessarily stop here. We have various campaigns.
So you just put an emphasis on this
because this month has been adopted as Consumer Rights Month.
All right, Advocate Legodi, thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, there you have it. Advocate Kedilatile Legodi is the acting manager responsible for education and communication from the National Credit Regulator, talking to us about the importance of March, of course, being the awareness campaign on consumers' rights.